none of you are exempt from what we're talking about today. All employers, regardless of size, are covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act and these wage and hour laws. Okay, so there's no small business exception, you know, for family and medical leave, under 50 employees, you don't have to worry about it. Title VII is 15 employees, Missouri laws are 6 employees. Well, this one, you're all covered. There are no different rules for part-time employees. As a practical matter, it's not going to have a big impact on part-time employees, and you'll see why. And I will tell you that the consequences for non-compliance with these rules are big. So, here's what the deal is. The law, as you all know, says that and this is what the law has always been. The law says that you have to pay time and a half overtime to any employee who works more than 40 hours in a week unless they fall under one of the exceptions or one of the exemptions. And we're going to go through what those exemptions are. To be exempt under one of those categories, you also have to meet a salary threshold. So there's a duties test and a salary test. The salary test is the only thing that's changed under the law, but it's double. And so that's why this has such a huge impact. The duties test didn't change. So if your employees were already properly classified as either exempt or non-exempt from overtime, then you're in pretty good shape. We just have to make sure that those exempt employees meet the new salary threshold. So let's talk for a minute about exemptions. And again, this isn't new. This is what the law has been all along. 1947. Yes. So to be exempt from overtime, for you not to have to pay someone overtime, time and a half if they work more than 40 hours in a week, there are a couple of different exemptions. One is administrative. To fall under the administrative exemption, the primary duty has to be non-manual work, and the job has to include exercise of discretion and independent judgment in matters of significance to the company. And that has to be more than 50% of the job, has to be exercising judgment in matters of significance. An executive exemption, the primary duty is managing or supervising 2 or more full-time employees. And they have to have some authority to hire and fire, at least to be able to make recommendations about hiring and firing. And you're going to have access to this slideshow. I see that you're going to have access to this. Then there's an exemption for learned or creative professionals. So architects are going to fall under this. Your designers are going to fall under this exemption. A learned professional is a doctor, lawyer, teacher, accountant. It's someone who has some usually specialized field of study. And then a creative professional is someone who uses artistic talent, invention, imagination, or originality in their work. And these are people who have had special training, like an architect. That's how they fall into that.
Engineer?
Engineer would be a learned professional.
Yeah, so that falls in for you, Gary.
But do they have to be a registered, licensed individual?
Not necessarily.
Do they have to have a professional degree?
Not necessarily, but you look real closely at their job duties. And if they're performing the same work as the person next to them who's got the engineering credentials, you're probably okay. It's, there's nothing bright line here, but in general, it's the duties that are going to matter.
Yeah, I want to make sure everybody understands a couple of terms here. When she's talking about duties, she's talking about job responsibilities. So the things that you are hiring a person to do. All right, so that's duties. And then when she says threshold, I want to make sure you're understanding what the term threshold means. Right? So Ann, can you explain this
Well, the salary threshold, we haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, so
but the salary threshold, they have to make at least that much money in order to be exempt. Yeah, we're not quite there.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the 3 primary exemptions.
Mitri?
Quick question.
Yes.
Artistic, inventive, imaginative, originality, would that encompass our activity directors who do supervise staff?
if they supervise 2 or more full-time employees,
Yeah,
you're covered under the executive managerial exemption.
okay. All right.
Okay, so here's some other exemptions. Certain computer employees, but these are only highly skilled systems people, programmers, and software engineers, not the help desk. That's not covered. But the highly skilled computer employees have their own exemption. Then outside sales employees have their own exemption if their primary duty is making sales that are performed away from the employer's place of business. And then last, highly compensated employees if they make over $134,004 a year. So those are your exemptions. So the first thing you're going to look at is to see if you're talking about an exempt or non-exempt employee and make sure you have your folks properly classified. Exempt employees, that means they're exempt from overtime, so you can work them as much as you want. If they're non-exempt, then you have to pay them for more than 40 hours in the week. And a non-exempt employee must be required to track their time on a daily basis, not filling out a timesheet at the end of the week, 8:40. That's not good enough. It can be logging into a computer, it can be on a hand timesheet, but there's got to be a contemporaneous record of the time worked for any of your non-exempt employees. And that's not new either, you know. But what is changing? Effective December 1st, the annual salary for an exempt employee goes from $23,660 to $47,476 a year. So that's a big change. It's almost double. So it used to be that we had $35,000 a year employees. We'd give them 2 people to supervise and work them 80 hours a week. You can't do that anymore. They also have to meet the salary threshold. They have to make at least $47,476 annually.
All right, so let's go to this example. Your activity directors, okay, they supervise 2 or more people, right?
Right.
Okay, so for her, with this, what would she have to do exactly, Andy?
Well, you have, do they make more than $47,476 a
No,
year?
and
Okay.
I have one that supervises 2 people, but I have one that only supervises 1.
Okay, well, the one that supervises 1, depending upon what their duties are, they're not gonna be a manager. Now, maybe they fall into one of the other exemptions, but we're getting there to what you do. You keep getting a step ahead of me.
I know, just wanted to make sure.
She said, "No, no, no."
Sorry, Ann.
Oh, okay, okay.
No, you're
So,
okay.
any employee who makes less than $47,476 a year has to be paid time and a half overtime if they work more than 40 hours in a work week. Because they can't be exempt if they don't make at least $47,476. Does that make sense? So if you have people who don't make $47,476 and that right now they're classified as exempt, what employers are going to do is either give them a raise if they're close, or they're going to bump them back to non-exempt status, and that person's going to have to track their time, and they're going to whine about it, and they won't like it.